Loud. Well, here we are. I am Julie Dennehy from CM443 here at Boston University, and I will be bringing you some experts every once in a while to help inform your journey towards becoming new public relations professionals. So please allow me to introduce Lisa Barrow. She came across my path, and she is an excellent recruiter in the public relations industry. So we have come up with some questions to be able to share with you and help guide you as you go your way towards the public relations field, which I'm very excited for all of my students. So Lisa, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Julie. Yes, my name is Lisa, and I am the owner and CEO and chief recruiter of Kata Recruiting. And it is a recruiting firm, and we focus on working with independent agencies, anything from PR to advertising to creative, on helping them build their teams and grow their teams. So we speak to PR professionals and advertising and marketing professionals all across the US on a daily basis to get an understanding of their backgrounds and help our clients find the best people for their teams.
Sounds good. So how long have you been doing this, Lisa?
I have been in the recruitment business for over 20 years now, so I date myself a little bit, but I started off working for a job board and then went from there into recruiting on the technical realm, and then spent almost 10 years at Monster.com, working with recruiters across the country and helping them with their processes. And then I've been at Kata for the past 7 years. So I went out on my own and have loved every minute of it, and have seen a lot of change within the recruitment industry in that 20-year span.
Fabulous. Let me ask you up front on that note, and you and I have that in common, that we worked for big agencies and then went out on our own. So I can appreciate your entrepreneurial spirit. Just real quickly, is there one particular thing you've noticed about PR, or specifically the digital marketing area of PR, in the last, say, 5 years since you've been recruiting?
I would say that yes, I would say that there's been more of a shift just in the recruitment in general, and really within digital marketing, of just the amount of access to the roles that are there and the outreach that's there. And of course, with the pandemic, you have a lot more flexibility when it comes to working from home or working hybrid. So that's been a very big shift. And I think in making that shift to those work from home and hybrid roles, that we're starting to see that there are different skills that employers are looking for that they weren't in the past, whether that's the ability to get on a Zoom properly, right? A lot of these interactions start with a Zoom interview or a Microsoft Teams or a Skype, and the expectation there is you need to be able to figure out how to do it, right? And if it's too much of a struggle, and we all know that those things happen and they can be kind of forgiven, but it's more of a red flag for them than it would have been in the past. And just being able to communicate remotely is just a very key piece to these positions, because even for 5 day a week in the office positions, you're still going to be remotely with your clients and things like that. So it's a new skill that's out there, really important.
Yeah, great point. So we have a couple of questions to review. We have about, this is about a 15-20 minute conversation. So the first question, which is what all my students love to ask, which is, what job, Lisa, what job should I go after? Which direction should I go? I'm a junior or senior in college, and I like PR. I'm in the PR program, but I don't know the direction in which I should be pointing my arrows when it comes to job search.
Great question, and a tough one that I think everyone has to face. So there's a couple aspects to it. One is figuring out what kind of companies that you want to go into. So you have the option of going more towards the agency work. That's what a lot of my clients focus in and where my area of expertise is. But There's going into an agency, a lot of really big pros to that. One of which is that you get you can have a variety of clients. You can really be able to see different types of industries within a single agency. The other pro to that too is that there's a lot of different paths from an agency standpoint. So you can start in accounts, you can start in content, you can start even more on the creative or the digital aspect of it. And at the beginning of your career, there's an opportunity to kind of change paths within even the agency that you're at, and you'll have a lot of ability and visibility to the roles that are there. So you would look at roles when you're searching for account coordinator, account executive, associate account executive, but this it goes across any role. Don't be tied into title. So there's different titles at different agencies, different companies that you'll see out there, and a lot of roles that people have, they may be open to going leveling up or leveling down. So be aggressive. If you see a role that maybe looks like it's too many years of experience, apply anyway. Don't expect to hear anything back, but you may be pleasantly surprised, and it's a low barrier to entry to just shoot over a resume there. You can also go in-house. Those are opportunities too, or also nonprofit government type work. So there's a lot of different paths within PR. And I encourage you to explore a variety when it comes to sending out those applications.
You mentioned about shooting high. Can you explain, in your opinion, at Boston University, there are a lot of students who have multiple internships and real life experience through PR Lab. So how does that rate in terms of where you should shoot?
Yes.
Does it count as work experience, et cetera?
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you that have been part of PR Lab or Ad Lab at BU, that's got a very great name within the industries, particularly through Boston University. When Julie and I first connected, that was one of the first things I asked about, because it has a really great reputation, and it really does mirror a lot of real life experience. So you should be able to leverage that as experience when you're in the interview and applying for roles. I would also make sure that you are not making the assumption that whomever you are interviewing with knows what it is. Even though it does have a really great reputation, not everybody understands it. So being able to explain that and knowing your story for that is a good thing to do in the interview process. But in terms of leveling up, don't expect to say like, oh, I've been doing this for years and this equals years of experience. It doesn't. But when someone says, oh, you don't have any work experience, you can leverage back and say, no, I've been doing this for 6 months, 12 months, whatever the case might be, and be prepared to give examples of what you did there, not just I did it. So
and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
That's really, really important.
Super. Yeah, great point. And apply above your pay grade, know what you need to make to pay your bills. Like what's your advice on salary expectations? And I know salary is more transparent now than ever before. So can you talk about that quickly?
And it is okay to ask about salary in the interviews, ask about range, and know that it's not always just a crazy negotiation game when someone says it's open. A lot of times companies really do have it open because they have accounts that need people at multiple levels, and they're looking for that right person or a team of people. So I would say that at entry level, what we're seeing right now will range anywhere from 45, depending on the market. I would say in the Boston market, if you're staying put, you'll probably look at more like a 50 to 55 for an entry level role. I've seen that go all the way up to 60, 65 to be able to negotiate with a lot of those really great internships. But keep your expectations in check. I've also seen a lot of people, particularly when the market got really crazy, that they were going after and getting 65, 70 in that entry level role. And now here we are 9 months later, and they're calling us back because they've been laid off. Last in, highest overpaid, and the market's resetting. So that extra $5,000, while it seems great, sometimes can end up hurting you at the end. Or
learn to put it aside. Right. If you feel like you're making a little bit more, maybe learn to squirrel it away a little bit.
Right, exactly.
Excellent. Let's get right into the interview uh topic because it's a hot one. You can't get into the discussion about pay or where you should be level wise until you ace that interview. So, what are some tools you should have in your toolbox before the interview even takes place?
Yes. So this is, I think, something I learned early on as a recruiter and also in interviewing as a person interviewing, is there is a method, a behavioral based method. So I'm going to tell this to you, it's almost like a trade secret that I think will help everybody. Um, some people call it a lot of different things, behavioral based interviewing. I call it the STAR method, right? Which is one of the ones that's out there. But what this means is STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. And the idea here is you want to come up with stories about your career, about the work that you've done, about your internships, even if it has to be personal life. You want to come up with stories of saying, here's what happened, here's the task that I was given, here's the actions that I took, and here's the result that happened. And I recommend that everyone has 3 or 4 of these in their tool belt before walking into any interview, because even though you may not know what questions are going to be asked, you will be pleasantly surprised at that how many can be answered with one of the 4 stories that you have. And practice it with your friends or your parents or your mirror or your dog. It doesn't matter. Say it out loud before you walk into those interviews and practice those stories, because if you've got those ready in your pocket, you're not trying to think up of things on the spot. And it's a great way to showcase, not saying, oh yeah, I can do that, yeah, I've done that. That's the worst answer you can give in an interview. It's, yes, I've done that, and let me tell you how, and here's what happened, here's what I was tasked with, and here's the result that I was able to drive with my talents. It comes across as very, very, very impressive. Some other quick things to think about: etiquette. So think through where you're sitting, what your background noise is. If you think, hey, someone might walk in, my roommate's coming home in the middle of my interview, and they have a tendency to do this, just lay it out front. People are understanding. We all know how that works in the world, but also don't sit in front of a dirty sink with a bunch of dishes piled up. Like, turn your computer around and sit in front of a wall, or put the wall behind you. So that's always a really good thing to think about. If it's just a phone interview, like, don't be eating while you're on there. Really make sure, don't make it sound, don't be walking around unless you have to be. Like, if you're like, hey, I'm outside, I had to step out of my internship right now, that type of thing, just lay that out. But if you're there, I can tell when people are on the phone doing their laundry, doing their dishes, things like that. I'm like, just take the 15, 30 minutes, an hour to focus on the task at hand.
All really great tips. You can do a virtual background as well. That will cut out those dirty dishes and
Exactly. Or just
background. Yeah, you don't want your prospective employer judging you based on what they see in the background, because that's not accurate and it's not fair. Now let's talk about portfolios, because I know that's something that you should have in your tool belt before, obviously, before you get your interview. Tell me what you love. Tell me what you hate.
Absolutely. So I think at this point in the game, having a portfolio is table stakes for getting a role. And when I say having a portfolio, this can mean a lot of different things. So a great way to do it is just to whip up a site on Wix, on any of the free sites that are out there. It doesn't have to be fancy. You're not going for a graphic design job, but something where you can showcase some of the work you've done. If you're really going for social media roles, I recommend making sure that you clean up all of your own personal handles and be able to bring in examples to the portfolio of things that you've posted, whether it be for it can be things that you've done for classwork. It can be done things for internship work. It could also be personal pet projects. And even if you want to spin up your own personal pet project, that's fine too, just so you can have those examples. So show social media posts if that's relevant. If you're going for more traditional PR roles, I would say write some press releases and put them up there. Again, it doesn't have to be quote unquote real. If they are, great, but if not, people will want to see samples of your work. If you don't feel comfortable sharing things from real work, like from an internship that you've had or things like that, then it's okay to just have some of those to be able to send as examples to the recruiter, to the hiring manager. It's common industry practice to do that. And you can even put on there, like, this needs to be confidential. Unless you're in a highly regulatory space like healthcare, it's completely fine to be able to share that. And I mean, if you're sharing press releases, they've been shared already.
You can also sanitize it and take names
Right.
out if you, that's another way to
Absolutely.
go.
Absolutely. So either have it ready in a folder to be able to send up on a website, and then also make sure you clean up your own social media space. If you have, I would also put things in multiple places. So if you have work that you can share on your LinkedIn, I recommend doing that as well. And if they don't request it, send it with your resume anyway. Say, hey, here's some examples. That's always a great one up when it comes to the hiring process.
I'm very impressed with our BU students and how their technical skills are just top notch when it comes to all of the tools that we need to use, especially in digital media, Canva, Adobe, the whole Adobe suite. Do you recommend that if you have those technical skills that you showcase them and sort of prove that you don't just say you
Absolutely.
can do it on your resume, but show?
Absolutely. Anytime you can show it and not just say it, it's gonna be a win. And point it out too, right? So if you're making your site, put what you've done on that site, right? Like selected the source the visuals or done the graphic design, here's my graphic design work, and put that kind of stuff there. Really great way to be able to get to that, either that first step, if it's from an application, or to that next step from the initial interview on to further interviews in the process.
I do have students ask, you mentioned pet projects, which is a great way to refine your portfolio pieces based on who you'd like to apply to, right? So if you're interested in beauty, you could do something for a nonprofit, related to, looking your best for a job interview or something like that. To
Absolutely.
try to steer your content for your pet project towards the prospect that you are applying for, right? And so my question to you is, recognizing that it's a pet project, a passion project, a labor of love, whatever you want to call it, a volunteer gig, do they weigh that any less or more? Is it just as relevant as your internship work if you create a pet project?
I would say that it is not necessarily as relevant as the internship work. I think the internships will absolutely be weighted more heavily in terms of the work itself of what you've done. Like if you did a press release during an internship versus just doing a faux one, so to speak, those
Right.
would be weighted differently. However, I think that if you're applying for a beauty job and your pet project is beauty, but your internship work is tech, they're going to weigh the fact that your pet project aligns with what they're doing more greatly than the fact that you had an internship in something else. So if your internships don't align with the industry that you're gearing toward, then I would recommend kind of putting some of that other stuff on there. But I would say that both are very valuable.
Great advice. How do you target, on that note? We know to follow your passion, but that's not always possible right out of the gate. How do you recommend that on the entry level side that students target their prospect list, not
Yeah.
just based on their passions, that might be a limited number of places they can interview to start. What tips do you have for that process?
Absolutely. So when you're applying, think outside of the box in terms of where your next role might be, because there's going to be, in any industry, there's going to be obvious ones that you're going to go after, whether it's beauty or nonprofit or things like that. You're like, okay, here's the top ones, let's go. Perfect, check. But don't write off some of the smaller agencies or agencies that are more like parallel aligned. So for example, if you're really interested in nonprofit work, I have a client that does advocacy work for government. It's not nonprofit, but it's nonprofit aligned, right? It feeds a lot of the same passion points that you might have. And it might be a great way to start working there, do that for 2 or 3 years, and then shift into that nonprofit work where you can really get into the meat of what you do. Or you might be pleasantly surprised and say, hey, my passion wasn't exactly where I thought it was. But and when it comes to agency work as well, you're going to find that you may have one main client, but you also have the opportunity to pick up other clients. And don't be so tied into just, I want to do XYZ, particularly at the beginning of your career, because so many people will either shift or you'll be able to find inroads to get to where you really want to be by taking something else. So if you're talking to a recruiter at the very beginning and they say, hey, we've got a job and this is the client, feel it out some before you completely write it off, because you just need to get that first role and then everything else will start to fall in place from there. In your first role, you don't have to stay for your whole life, right? I think everyone kind of gets a pass on that job hopping bad tag or whatever you want to call, red flag. You can stay in your first role for a year and then switch. Now the next role you can't stay a year and switch, stay a year and switch, but get that first role, even if it's 9 months, you can finagle that in your career path process. But get your foot in the door, start working, and then try and figure it out from there. It's a lot easier to do than from the very, very first step.
I guess similarly, I guess the last point there is not just what company, but how to approach. Obviously, if there's a job posted online, you apply online. But talk a little bit about quickly, I guess, about networking and what angle to approach. And if you kind of go, can you send your resume to more than one person within that company?
Absolutely. So step one, apply online, and you're going to be one of hundreds probably. So keep that in mind. Step two, go on LinkedIn and try and figure out who the hiring manager is for the role. Sometimes LinkedIn will tell you who the recruiter is, but it's okay to, I don't want to say circumvent them, but in addition to, if you're applying for a PR role and you see the director of PR, send them a note. Hey, I'm really interested in your company. I had applied for a role, even if I'm not the right fit, would love to build my network. And take those calls. Those networking calls will eventually lead to something good. May not be a job, but it could be connections. It could be connections to a job. So and it's great practice to get on the phone, have those conversations with people where it's a little bit lower stakes, or hey, you may find yourself in that dream role that you're looking for.
Yeah, maybe the one posted online is not the dream role, but they might have access to the one you didn't know that's not posted. So great. I guess the last point is follow up. Any tips on whether or not you should follow up?
Here's the simplest, easy tip for follow up that will make you stand out from the crowd. Follow up. You would be shocked at the number of people that go for an interview and then that's it. No thank you email. You don't have, the handwritten letters, those don't really happen anymore, especially in this virtual world. If you want to be extra, do it. Like there's no problem with a quick, like, thank you, I really appreciate it note. I would caution on those. Also send an email, because sometimes people are like, oh, I didn't get a follow-up, and then their decisions made before your letter gets there. But send a follow-up email or a LinkedIn message. And if you don't hear from them I would say 1 to 2 weeks after your interview, send another follow-up and just say, hey, was really interested in the role. Any updates? I understand these things take a long time. That's it. Don't be too aggressive, but sometimes there's just reasons for things taking longer, and you'll at least not have to be sitting on your anxiety for it. Or maybe they just weren't giving you feedback and they'll let you know, hey, you didn't make it, and then you can move on to the next.
Which is equally as important.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a grind. So I don't envy all of you out in that job search world, but you've got a good background, coming a great degree. So you'll be out for doing great things.
My advice to my students, and you are certainly the expert, is to be confident about your abilities. You know, especially our BU students, they're very well qualified, especially those with internships and real world experience. Would be confident in your abilities and let that come through in the interview. Be positive about the opportunity in general. Like, they want to see enthusiasm, and you want to be the person chemistry wise that people want on your team. And also show some curiosity about their industry. I've been reading about this, or I follow you on social. I'm just curious, you know, how do you, and come up with an industry question to show that you have that, you know, that fire in the belly. Because I do hear from agency principals that are friends of mine that the fire in the belly is what, you know, they can train everything else. They can't really train you to have fire in the belly of what you're doing, and in an authentic way, not in a fake way. You know, doing it in a fake way, that'll come through, and that's not good. But do you agree with those points?
1000%, right? That fire in the belly. I hear the curiosity, that willingness to learn, ask questions, be confident, and be confident, but don't just say I can do it. Show your examples with it. You'll be good to go.
Yeah, really great point about the portfolio, to show me, not tell me, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's our time. Lisa, you are so smart, and I hope we can tap into your expertise for other topics. But thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
And I will have my students follow you on LinkedIn and follow your company, or follow you. What do you prefer?
Both. Lisa Barrow and Kada Recruiting, KADA, and we'll make sure you get all of the links. And thank you very much. This has been amazing, and I love just being able to help people get into the industry.
Thank you, Lisa.